When you spend an evening scrolling through endless listings of high-end AV receivers, you quickly hit that familiar snag. The specs look impressive, the pictures are pristine, but there's always that nagging feeling that the thing might not actually fit into the messy reality of your living room. I've talked to a lot of people who bought a receiver that promised 8K and Dolby Atmos and then spent weeks wrestling with HDMI ARC quirks, Wi-Fi drops, and a user interface that feels more like a space engineer's console than a family room device. If you've ever hesitated at checkout because you're not sure whether the extra power will actually translate into a better movie night or smoother gaming session, this review is for you. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the core question: who actually needs a machine like the Denon AVR X6800H? If you're the type who already has a 4K TV, a couple of Atmos-enabled speakers, and you're planning to future-proof your setup for the next wave of 8K content, then the high-performance side of this receiver makes sense. It's built to handle up to 13.4 channel processing, which means you can run a full Dolby Atmos layout with height speakers, and still have room for a couple of rear surrounds or a subwoofer. That extra headroom is something you'll notice when you sit down for a big screen game session. Gaming frames are rendered more cleanly, and the latency drops enough to keep the action feeling immediate. On the flip side, if your current system stops at a 5.1 or even a basic 7.1 surround, and you're happy with 4K streaming from Netflix or Hulu, the AVR X6800H might be overkill. You'll still get decent sound, but you'll also be paying for processing power you probably won't tap. In practice, I've seen owners of mid-range setups who upgrade to this model and end up not using the extra channels because their speaker layout simply doesn't support them. The money you spend on the extra wattage 140W per channel doesn't translate into noticeable loudness or clarity unless you have a properly calibrated room and enough speakers to make use of the processing. Now let's walk through a real-world installation scenario. Suppose you have an 8K TV in the main family room, a pair of front-firing Atmos-enabled speakers, 2 side surrounds, a couple of height modules, and a powered sub. You connect the TV to the receiver via HDMI 2.1, link your PlayStation 5 for next-gen gaming, and add a streaming box for Netflix. The on-screen setup guide walks you through each step, but the nuance lies in the HDMI allocation. The AVR X6800H has 7 HDMI inputs and 2 outputs, and each has to be allocated carefully if you want to keep the TV's ARC or eARC functional. In my own testing, I found that assigning the TV's HDMI RC to the dedicated HDMI out port prevented the video from passing through the external player correctly, so I had to switch the TV's HDMI RC setting to the HDMI 1 input instead. It's a little confusing at first, but the guide does flag the potential pitfall, and once you've sorted the routing, the system runs without hiccups. One practical strength of this receiver is how it handles Wi-Fi and Bluetooth streaming. Denon's built-in HEOS platform makes it straightforward to pull music from Spotify, Apple Music, or even a local network share, and you can control everything from the Denon remote app. In a house with multiple rooms, I've noticed the connection stays solid even when the router is busy with other devices, which is a relief after some other receivers I've owned started stuttering during long playlists. Also, the Bluetooth pairing is quick, just a couple taps and you're playing audio from a phone or tablet without any lag. For families that love to throw a quick karaoke session or stream a YouTube video to the TV speakers, that convenience is actually a daily win. However, the receiver does have a few hidden trade-offs that aren't obvious in the spec sheet. The most prominent is the menu navigation. Denon's interface is clean, but it can be a bit nested, and finding the exact setting for a specific Dolby Atmos height channel sometimes means diving several layers deep. If you're someone who likes to tweak EQ settings on the fly, you might find yourself scrolling through the audio menu just to adjust a single speaker's level. That's not a deal-breaker, but it does add a learning curve compared to some newer rivals that use a more intuitive touch interface. Another practical weakness shows up when you pair the receiver with older HDMI devices that don't support HDMI 2.1. The X6800H's 8K handling is impressive, but when you connect a 4K Blu-ray player that only supports HDMI 2.0, the receiver automatically downconverts the signal. That part works fine, yet the on-screen display sometimes misreports the input resolution, leading you to think you're getting 8K when you're not. It's a minor annoyance, but if you rely on accurate picture information for calibration, you'll need